Hi everyone, I hope you're all well. A long time ago I made a video arguing in favour of the theory that Tewdrig, a historical king of southeast Wales in about the 6th century, was the historical figure behind the legendary character of Uther Pendragon in Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regum Britanniae. Now in that video I focused on the death story of Uther Pendragon, and I showed how it corresponded very well with the death story of Tewdrig, indicating that they were in fact one and the same person. So in this video I wanted to take a look at another aspect of the legendary life of Uther Pendragon and see how that ties in with the life of Tewdrig. So the particular episode in his life that I'm going to be talking about is something that occurred towards the end of the reign of Ambrosius, supposedly the older brother of Uther Pendragon. So the Irish were said to have invaded southwest Wales, and then Uther was sent out by his older brother to lead a military campaign to fight against the Irish, which he did, and he was successful, and the Irish were driven out of that country, or that territory. So how does this tie in with the life of Tewdrig? Well, first of all, we need to know when it happened, or when it was supposed to have happened. So the life, or rather the reign of Ambrosius, or rather his campaigns against the Saxons, is placed in the time of Emperor Zeno, according to Bede. So that would place him between the 470s and the 490s. And according to Geoffrey of Monmouth, Ambrosius was active for quite a while. So since this event involving Uther and the Irish was said to have occurred towards the end of Ambrosius's reign, that would indicate we're looking at a date around about the year 500 probably. And since this was supposed to have occurred just shortly before the birth of Arthur, that also ties in, because Arthur, according to my chronology at least, would have been born around the year 500. So everything indicates that the year 500 is when this event was supposed to have happened. So with that in mind, is there any evidence that Tewdrig drove out the Irish from southwest Wales in about the year 500? Well, first of all, let's think about the Irish in southwest Wales, just isolated, not involving Tewdrig at the moment. Well, it's known that the Irish really did settle in southwest Wales in about, well, towards the end of the era in which the Romans were dominating Britain, around the end of the 4th century. And then they continued to inhabit southwest Wales, not just southwest Wales actually, but they also settled all over the western half of Wales. And they continued to do so for a while, but then in north West Wales and the middle of West Wales, they were driven out, apparently by Cynefin and his sons. But they continued to inhabit southwest Wales, and available king lists indicate that they continued ruling southwest Wales until about the year 500. So these king lists obviously don't come with actual dates listed next to each king, unfortunately. It'd be very helpful if they did. But by counting back from individuals of certain dates, we can see quite clearly that the era in which these Irish names end is about 500, about the year 500. So these Irish names end and they're suddenly replaced with people who have Roman-sounding names. So that indicates, and this has been acknowledged by a number of scholars, that in about the year 500 the Irish dynasty was expelled and replaced with a more Romanesque dynasty. So how does that tie in with Tewdrig and Uther Pendragon? Well, even isolated from the question of who was involved in this, it indicates that the basic concept of the Irish being driven out of southwest Wales in about the year 500 is historical. So that lends historical weight to the story in the history of the Historia Regum Britanniae. But who was the one responsible for it? Well, the Historia Regum Britanniae names the character responsible for it as Uther Pendragon. But in records about Tewdrig, they describe him as being the one who drove the Irish out of Wales. Now, admittedly, it doesn't say where in Wales the Irish were when Tewdrig fought against them and drove them out of the country. But as I said before Tewdrig's time, the Irish had already been driven out of the north and the middle of the western half of Wales, so the only place left, and this is also, as I said, indicated by the king lists, was the south-west part of Wales. So that indicates that the only place the Irish could have been for Tewdrig to drive them out was southwest Wales, the same area in which Uther Pendragon drove them out of Wales. Now, admittedly, these records about Tewdrig driving the Irish out of southwest Wales, they are quite late. They're late records. They're from, I think, the 18th century. So we can't place the same weight on these records as we could with, say, the Book of Llandaff from the 12th century. But nonetheless, there's no evidence in this record about Tewdrig driving the Irish out of Wales that indicates that it's designed to try to make him look like Uther Pendragon, because nothing else in this description of Tewdrig seems to explicitly connect him with the tale of Uther Pendragon. So, although it is a late record, I don't think there's any reason to be overly suspicious of it. So the point is that the available evidence, although it's not conclusive or necessarily explicit, I believe the available evidence indicates that the most likely historical conclusion is that Tewdrig was the king who drove the Irish out of southwest Wales and resulted in this sudden change from Irish names to Roman names that we see in the later king lists about this period. So with that being the case, I believe that Tewdrig, logically, is the most likely historical figure behind the character of Uther Pendragon, especially when we combine the correspondence with this event with the correspondence with their death stories as well, being very similar. So those are just two of the reasons why I believe that Tewdrig was almost certainly the historical figure behind Geoffrey of Monmouth's legendary Uther Pendragon.